Hey, what's up? Here's 5 career-related things I would tell my younger self. Number 1, make sure you get your annual review. Make sure you get an annual performance review. So one of the places that I worked did not automatically set up or organize your annual review, so you would have to ask them. But I was a little bit timid, and I was waiting to see if they would set one up, and they didn't. So I think after about a year and a half or so, about a year and a half or so, I requested a performance review. I finally got one, finally got a pay rise. It's a small pay rise that kind of covered enough, I guess. But then after that, I waited again, and again, no performance review. I waited another year and a half, and then I finally kind of got fed up, and so I emailed them again. And then I got a performance review, got the same pay rise as I got the last time, which was not that impressive, considering that I was working fairly hard. I would think that it would kind of show, but I feel like I was getting a standard pay rise, which didn't really feel that good. You kind of want a pay rise that reflects how hard you're working, or certainly how much results that you're able to produce. Number 2, this one I think is probably more suitable to somebody who has less than 8 years of experience, but when you're working at a company and you see people leave the company, especially people that are in the same role but more experienced than you, if this suits your personality type, or if you're super curious, ask them what they're making at the company. If they don't want to share this information, of course they might not share this information, but I've found that people tend to care less as they're leaving a company, whether or not you know. Obviously it can be kind of taboo talking about salaries, it's a whole other thing. But yeah, somebody had done this to me when I left a company, and I found it so interesting that I asked them if they'd done that to other people in the company as well, and they had. And so I thought from that point on that I would try the same thing, and I did try it at the next place I went to, and it was super useful information because I found that I was very underpaid, and then luckily the company I was working at managed to correct it, but it was a very interesting insight to get, and it certainly helped me get my salary kind of bumped up, or get it to where I felt like it should be, and based on other people where subjectively it should have been. And number 3, have a backbone. And what I mean by that is don't take any disrespect. Obviously with work, sometimes you're going to get the slight disrespect here and there. Obviously use your judgment as to what their intentions are and things like that. If someone's being blatantly disrespectful, or if enough disrespect kind of builds up, I think you should address it. I think for your own mental health, it's good to kind of, I don't know what the phrase is, but pretty much cut it off as soon as it kind of gets iffy. And it's tricky, especially at work, because it kind of, you weigh out whether you want to be professional or whether you want to kind of show people what you're about. And yeah, I think if it's small things, I think it can happen at work, and I'm sure I've probably done small things that other people might have thought have been disrespectful as well. Not that I intended to, but small things like that can happen. But if somebody's blatantly being disrespectful, definitely call them out on it. And I think it's risky, especially, it's tougher earlier on in your career, because it might be, depending on what your background is, it could be hard to find another role, so you have to play it safe. That's why it's probably good to have a bit of a safety net, maybe 6 months of savings just in case. So I think it's tough early on in your career. It could be tough kind of in the middle of your career or late. Yeah, around the middle of your career when maybe you've got a mortgage, you've got kids. So you need that income, you need that salary as well. So that can make it tougher as well and make you have to play ball. But if people are being disrespectful, like, yeah, you just got to take care of it, because the toughest part is if the key players, like people like the boss or the managers, if they're all on the side of the person that's being disrespectful, that can make things very tricky as well. But you have to imagine, or I certainly imagine, that if they're being disrespectful to me, then I imagine they're probably being disrespectful to others. And the earlier you raise it, the more evidence maybe that the other people, the key players, might gather, and maybe they'll do something about it. Oftentimes, or the one time I think that I did see this, they were kind of like the boss's pets, or like their favorites. So I don't think the boss was ever going to do anything to those people, but yeah, the best thing you can do is try. And I guess it depends on the company structure as well. If it's just a sole dictator, like a CEO founder that's kind of running like a small to medium-sized business, that's very insular. But if you're kind of in a bigger company where there's maybe a board and there are rules and things in place, procedures in place that can kind of manage the situation, I think that's certainly a lot healthier than the former. Number 4, kind of similar, but sometimes, not everyone at work is your friend, and you may not click, or people may feel threatened that you're trying to take their job, or perhaps they feel insecure, or they feel that nobody helped them, so they don't want to help you. And variations of that regard, I think there may be people that don't want to help you, and sometimes you just have to accept that as reality. But there are also people that do that as a way to kind of manipulate you, or if they're not getting their way, or if you're not behaving in the way that they're thinking, then they might stop talking to you, or they might stop responding to your messages. I think in those times, personally, I would say clown them. Like, as best as you can, just clown them. Like, embarrass them. Go to a private, instead of trying to message them directly where they're not responding, maybe tag them in a public chat where other people can see how slow they're responding, if at all. And then if it continues to be a problem, I think obviously probably need to talk to your manager or something like that. But yeah, I don't think that's normal. I think that's something wrong with the other person. Not wrong with the other person, but there's an issue there. And I think the best thing you can do is try to resolve it, especially because at work sometimes you can't avoid some of these situations. So yeah. Number 5, this is a good one. The personal opinion, and I guess it can depend on the case, but I think based on experience, the best thing you can do with your paid annual leave is to use it. And I say this as somebody who has cashed in their paid annual leave before. I think I turned about a week or 2 into cash, and I didn't have a very high salary at the time. I had a low salary, I was underpaid, and at the time it felt like a good idea, because it felt like I was getting $1,000 or so free money. It was coming out of thin air, even though I was trading my annual leave for it. But I think what that does is it shows that to myself, it showed that maybe this is what I think my time is worth. And whereas if you took your annual leave and you went on holiday or you did whatever, it kind of shows that you value your time more than what they're paying you. It also, taking the time off, I think also helps kind of with the longevity of working at a company, because at the end of your tenure, you might have some annual leave saved up. On your CV, what day are you going to put on that was your last day? probably not the end of what your annual leave, what the use of your annual leave would have been. It would have been the day that you finally stopped coming into work, right? So I think use your annual leave. I think that's a good thing to do. And obviously it depends, because if you really needed that one, like if I really needed that $1,000, like that's fine. But yeah, looking back, I would have done that differently. Yeah, hopefully you found that useful. Thanks for watching.